All right, family, come on in. Come on in. Okay, we got to get into it because Trump is trying to send us back to Jim Crow. Okay, he's trying to bring back segregation. All right, so let's talk about it because we already know that he had this whole war that he waged on DEI. Okay, so let's talk about it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Trump administration no longer requires ban on segregated facilities in government contracts. Okay, so what exactly does this all mean? Well, I'm so glad you asked. So, the Trump administration is no longer requiring an explicit prohibition of segregated facilities in new government contracts. You see, the February 15th memo from the U.S. General Services Administration, also known as GSA, was first reported on Tuesday. Now, segregation is still illegal in the U.S., and the memo states that contractors are still subject to laws on civil rights and non discrimination. However, the directive from the GSA, which manages federal property and sources contracting options for other agencies, came in response to one of President Donald Trump's executive orders that aim to roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal government. Okay, and this is what you need to know about this order. Now, following anti-DEI order, federal agencies nixed the 1960s segregation prohibition from contracts. Okay, the memo states that the changes to contract and solicitation terms for federal agencies are necessary after Trump's January 21st executive order titled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. That's what he called it. Now, along with other programs Trump considered under the diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility umbrella, the order revoked the 1965 Equal Opportunity or the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order, which was signed by former President Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, Johnson's order required government contracts to include non-discrimination language. Now, in its place, as the memo lays out, contracts do not include provisions including prohibition of segregated facilities, which includes restrooms, drinking fountains, and transportation. Okay, please pay attention. Now, civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump posted on X about the measure, saying that this change sends a clear message. Well, I absolutely agree. It certainly does. Muslim Civil Rights and Advocacy Organization Council on American Islamic Relations also criticized the measure, saying as our nation unfortunately becomes more divided and polarized, the last thing we need is any effort that could be perceived as allowing racial segregation. Okay, this is what CAR, National Communications Director Ibrahim Hooper, said in an emailed statement, saying that we must not turn back the clock to a time in our nation's history when racism and white supremacy were written into laws and contracts. But GSA spokesperson Stephanie Joseph defended the measure, saying that duplicative regulations in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the regulation standard for government suppliers, put an unnecessary burden on American companies working with the government. Now, this is why reforming the Federal Acquisition Regulation is such a high priority for GSA and this administration, Joseph says. We are moving at the speed of need to quickly undo the damaging policies of the past administration. The entirety of the clause in question was originally implemented because of an EO under a former administration. Okay, this is what they are saying. Are y'all paying attention to this, honey? Trump is trying to take us all the way back. The clause in question is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is also known as FAR. Okay, it's a huge document used by agencies to write contracts for anyone providing goods or services to the federal government. Now, clause 52.2222-21 of the FAR, or the FAR, is titled Prohibition of Segregated Facilities, and it reads saying, The contractor agrees that it does not and will not maintain or provide its employees any segregated facilities at any of its establishments, and that it does not and will not permit its employees to perform their services at any location under its control where segregated facilities are maintained. Okay, so please pay attention. I just find this all very interesting because at the end of the day, some of our people have been saying that they wouldn't mind going back to segregation as it pertains to having to deal with, hate crimes and racism and things like that. But now what we weren't thinking about was how that would also take away some of the other things that benefit us. Okay, like nonprofits that help disparaged communities that are going through things. Okay, scholarships like the Hope Scholarship. Okay, different types of things that help people pertaining to certain demographics at the end of the day. Okay, but so anyway, I find it all very interesting. And also, it goes on to say it defines segregated facilities as work areas, restaurants, drinking fountains, transportation, housing, and more. And it says that you can't segregate based on race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. Several federal agencies, including the Departments of Defense, Commerce, and Homeland Security, have notified staff who oversee federal contracts that they should start instituting these changes. Okay, so are y'all hearing this? Say that they're notifying staff that they need to start going ahead and implementing these changes. Okay, and so basically, this is making it easy for people to just be practice discrimination with certain groups of people at the end of the day. This is all very interesting because at the end of the day, Trump is definitely trying to take us back. Okay, even though they'll sit here and act like his advocates, of course, they'll act like that's not what he's intending. Okay, but he literally revoked executive policies dating as far back as 1965 on equal employment opportunities, environmental actions designed to protect communities of color, and workforce balancing. Okay, efforts by federal contractors based on race, gender, and religion. And he's not trying to take us back. Of course he is. Okay, because the 1965 action was aimed, it was put out there to end discriminatory practices in the hiring and employment on the part of the U.S. government contractors. So, yeah, I find it all interesting because the key takeaway from this is that the memo stated that when issuing new solicitations or contracts, civil agencies should no longer include the provision and clause about the prohibition of segregated facilities. Okay, but while the memo step was symbolic, civil rights advocates noted it is part of a trend with Trump's policymaking. They said that any step that may give the perception of turning back the clock on racial segregation was not welcome. That's what they're saying. But do you believe that? Trump and his allies defend his actions by saying that his orders aim to remove what they call discrimination against other Americans, including white people and men. When have white people and men specifically been discriminated against in this country ever? This is no different than when we came out saying Black Lives Matter, trying to draw attention to the Black lives that were being taken unjustly. And then people came out and said, no, all lives matter or white lives matter. Okay, this is the same thing. The people that have been oppressed are now being accused of being oppressors. The people that have been constantly and continuously discriminated against are now the ones being accused of of practicing discriminatory tactics. Is that what Trump's saying? Well, yeah, that's what he's saying. Because he's saying that white people and men are the ones that have been discriminated against. And that he's going to put a stop to all of that. I just want you all to pay attention because this is all bad news at the end of the day. But, I'm sure some people don't see it that way. I'm sure some people don't think this is a big deal. But in fact, it absolutely is. So anyway, you all, this is going to get real ugly. It's already gotten ugly hell as far as I'm concerned. Okay, what's he going to do tomorrow? Because every day it's literally some other BS with Trump and Elon Musk. Okay, I just hope y'all are paying attention because we're in for a bumpy ride, like I keep saying. Anyway, legal experts say this change to contracts across the federal government is significant. Alyssa Murray Melissa Murray, who's a constitutional law professor at New York University. Well, here's what she had to say about it all. And please be sure to like and share the video, beloveds. Please be sure to like and share. She says it's symbolic, but it's incredibly meaningful in its symbolism. This is what she says. She says these provisions that required federal contractors to adhere to and to comply with federal civil rights laws and to maintain integrated rather than segregated workplaces were all part of the government's efforts to facilitate the settlement that led to integration in the 1950s and 60s. The fact that they are now excluding those provisions from the requirements for federal contractors, I think speaks volumes. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're leaving the window for people to be discriminated against. Okay? And here's the thing, not just people who look like me, not just the migrants that come over here, but also people that are LGBTQ, specifically people that are transgender. I'm pretty sure they're going to be doing things like that. And here's the thing. To me, Jim Crow never really left because they still have certain things that they do to let us know, people who look like me, that we're not wanted in certain fields of study or in certain places of work, or that we can't be a certain way if we are in those fields, such as in corporate America, they don't want you wearing afros, locks, twists. Okay, they don't want you wearing very ethnic or cultural hairstyles if you're a person of color, a person who looks like me, okay, i.e. a Black person. They don't want you doing that. And this is why we had to come up with the Crown Act. Now, why would we have to come up with something that prohibits them from discriminating against us from simply wearing our hair in the natural state that it grew in? Okay? This is just something that they did, them talking about you can't wear your hair like this, you can't wear your hair like that. Well, these are all Black people's hairstyles. So basically, it's still like a whites only wanted sign hanging in a window, even though they try to twist it around and make it something different, but it's still the same thing in my opinion. Okay, that's how I've always felt, that they continue to do the same things, perpetuate the same type of tactics, but they just call them something else, okay, and try to act as though it's not what we've already, or what our ancestors have already, in fact, gone through. Okay, but you all drop me a comment, let me know what you think, because I absolutely feel that, yes, absolutely, Trump is going ahead, a step ahead, not just trying to eliminate DEI, but also trying to get rid of, certain programs, other programs that can benefit people that are in disparaged communities or certain demographics, like I said, and scholarships, nonprofits, and all of that, just making it very, very difficult for people to get a leg up. Okay, this can all impact small businesses at the end of the day. But like I said, this is nothing new. When they talk about they need to check your credit score before you get hired at certain jobs, why do they need to know your credit score? That's another way of being discriminatory towards a certain segment of people. Okay? Because the truth of the matter is, most people, specifically people that live in poor communities, disparaged communities, which are usually people who look like me or people who are immigrants, but specifically people who look like me, tend to have bad credit due to a lack of resources. Okay? Due to sometimes due to their own irresponsible ways, but in many cases also due to the fact that they have limited resources in their community and that they are often overlooked for certain jobs in certain fields and areas, even if they have degrees in those fields. Somebody who doesn't look like them can get the job and not even have the same degree or the same level of expertise or experience, okay? So please pay attention. With that all being said, honey, like I keep telling y'all, get ready, buckle your seatbelts, because, honey, we're about to go on a whole ride, because Trump is doing what he already had planned to do. This is how they're implementing Project 2025. Like I told you all on yesterday. Certain things that they're doing, this is just a sneaky way of sliding Project 2025 in, even though Trump lied and said he had not a thing to do with it. Okay, so with that all being said, I love you all to life. I hope you enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Okay, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember to keep the Most High first in your lives. And please be sure to drop me a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. And I will talk to you all again soon. Peace.